Hi there, and welcome back to It's Not Rocket Science, 5 questions over coffee. I have in front of me my coffee. This is going to keep me going as I'm chatting today to Patrick Van der Burght. Patrick is, Patrick's an expert in how you get somebody to say yes ethically. Now, if you've ever been in sales, if you've ever been trying to help anybody understand the need to say yes, and you only feel dirty and somehow manipulative when you try and do it, this is getting somebody to do that by ethically helping them to understand how they are going to be benefited from your product, your service, from working with you. So Patrick, I'm really delighted to welcome you here to talk about this Cialdini method. And I'm delighted you managed to make a few minutes available to us in order to talk to us. So welcome to It's Not Rocket Science, 5 questions over coffee.
Thank you for inviting me, Stuart. I'm excited to be here. And I remember quite clearly when I first was introduced to this, and I was learning the insights and human behavior, the research, how amazing that was and how empowering that was. And I couldn't believe how potent, how powerful it is. And you didn't have to lie or cheat to make it to work either. And I love seeing that in, when I do a keynote and people are starting to wake up to the fact of what I'm actually teaching them. You see the eyes go bigger. And I know they're having that same realization that I had, goodness, 25, 26 years ago. So, we can't see our audience, of course. I'm hoping those eyes are getting a little bigger in the time that we've got together.
I absolutely agree with you, Patrick. And people, if you're watching at the moment, look, please, if you have questions whilst we're talking, or indeed after we've finished, if you come to the recording of this and you're interested in getting some more information and you're wanting to understand, we'll talk about how you can get some free stuff from Patrick. But also, if you want to drop questions or comments into the chat below, we will answer them for you. So you get sort of free consultancy immediately from an expert like Patrick. But Patrick, let's start by trying to sort of set the scene. Let's understand what we're talking about. You have been working in this field for a while. So what is it? Who is it you're trying to reach? I mentioned salespeople, but it's not just sales, is it? It could be anybody trying to sort of help understand a problem and help sort of work with somebody who needs to better understand what they're trying to do themselves.
Yeah, ethical persuasion really is a soft skill that we all need. And as a matter of fact, the World Economic Forum did a study that they published last January looking at thousands of companies in terms of what businesses need moving forward in the next 5 years. And leadership and social influence, which is another word for ethical persuasion, had been increased in priority from position number 4, which was in the previous report, to position number 3. And also another study done by CashNet, which was published by Forbes, that looked at 17 million job listings in terms of what businesses are asking for in their new employees. Mm-hmm. And persuasion was also ranked there number 3. And it is a skill that helps us professionally, but also privately. And simply put, whenever we're trying to get an idea accepted or get somebody to buy into what we're suggesting or asking for, and that can be sales, but it doesn't have to be. Whenever we're trying to make that request and there's someone in the middle that needs to agree with that, then you're relying on your ability to be persuasive in terms of how quickly you will move to your goals or move to your boss's goals. But that also applies privately. If you try to get your kids to clean up their room, you'll need to be persuasive. And if you want your partner to really go to that holiday destination in the coming summer, then you're going to have to be persuasive. So this comes back everywhere, and that's the beauty of it. You can use it in both in business and privately and ethically without having to bend or tarnish your integrity.
So we're talking about a way to help you get your message across to somebody, to sell somebody on your ideas. So you might be a project manager trying to persuade a customer or a team member in order to sort of meet your timeline. You might be a salesperson trying to sell your product. You could be the CEO attempting to persuade an entire company that the strategy you've got is worth coming. This is applicable to everybody. And I think it's important to recognize, as you just said, that you don't just use these skills at work. You use these skills when you get home from work, and you might find yourself in the situation where your partner is trying to persuade you to eat that salad rather than the steak you want. So, they are probably going to be wanting to try and sell you on something that you recognize probably is good for you, but you don't want to go there. So these are really important skills. So what is it you find that people have done? I mean, what are the routes people have tried? I mean, I've known that I've tried sort of, processes. I've tried buying into people's sort of, this 16-step method to get somebody to say yes. And we've all tried these things. What is it they've tried to do before they come across something like you and the method that you're now teaching?
Well, I suppose we should recognize that, of course, everybody tries lots and lots of different things to see what works, right? And so in different industries, we've bumped into particular things that we somehow figured out that worked, strategies that worked, and we don't really understand why they worked. They just do. And actually, that's exactly what Dr. Robert Cialdini, my partner, how he started with all this. He became a university professor in the late 70s, and he was fascinated with the request process. What makes an individual say yes to another person's request? And how can it be that I can make a request one way and get a small amount of yeses, and I can ask basically the same request, but in a different way, and I get a lot more yeses? He was fascinated by that. And he realized at the time that there was, back then, in the late 70s, there was already nearly 50 years worth of scientific research on persuasion, but it was all laboratory stuff, laboratory experiments. Put somebody in a controlled environment and then sort of experiment on them. And so he realized that, if he really wanted to know how this worked, he would have to go into the real world where the battles of persuasion and influence are fought every single day. And so he did something that was unheard of for a scientist at that time. He took 3 years off, and he with disguised identity and disguised intent, he enrolled in as many new employee training courses as he could possibly get access to. Because he, like I mentioned, in every industry, we figure out, with a lot of trial and error, we figure out some things that work for us. And so he collected all these strategies from all these different industries, and all these industries all told him how different they were, right? And the departments would tell them how different they were. As in, the people in sales would say, what we do in advertising what we do in sales is so different than what they do in advertising. And the people in advertising would say, what we do is so different than what happens in marketing. And marketing would do the same with HR. And so they were all trying to convey how different they were. But Dr. Cialdini actually looked for what was it that was similar in those strategies. What is it that makes it work? So, when you say, what do people often try? I think we try a lot of different things, and we waste a lot of time and resources, and we sometimes bump into something that we learn works, and then we tend to go with that. The problem is that sometimes we also land on strategies that are not exactly ethical, and then we're risking our brand and our reputation, which nowadays can be very quickly destroyed. And what can also happen is that when we don't know the science, that sometimes accidentally, and this happens so much more often than you'd realize, sometimes people use an argument and they're actually very effectively working against what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And so that happens all the time as well.
Yeah. So this is where we get to what I hope is going to be the valuable piece of advice that you're going to leave with us, Patrick. And for those people who are going to, there's some free stuff that we're going to put from Patrick in our vault. So if you go to systemize.me/free-stuff, you'll find some offers from Patrick where he's gonna be able to walk you through some of this stuff. But I'm going to ask you, so Patrick, what can you tell us about the ethical persuasion that Dr. Cialdini has? I'm not going to say it's discovered. I mean, he's using human psychology and he's understanding human psychology. So he's discovered how people react to this stuff and how you can use these persuasive methods. So would you mind just sort of giving that valuable sort of high level? How do you do this sort of thing so that people get interested, and then hopefully, as I say, we'll be grabbing hold of some of your free stuff. So just walk us through an example, if you like, of how do you get somebody to say yes ethically?
Okay, so it all depends on the situation. So it's hard to say, oh, this is one way how you do that. But I think what your audience would gain a lot from if we first discuss how human beings actually make decisions. And then from there, it then starts making sense why these principles are so powerful. And we can do a quick
Great way of doing it. Great way of doing it. Great way of doing it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So when it comes to decision making, I'm going to lean on the work of a professor, Daniel Kahneman. He was a professor in psychology and a behavioral scientist, and he won a Nobel Prize.
Slow, if I remember rightly.
Absolutely. He won a Nobel Prize in 2002 in economics, which is a little unexpected, right? Behavioral scientist wins Nobel Prize in economics. I mean, what can you come up with in behavioral science that has such an impact on economics that you win a Nobel Prize for it? Well, a lot of his research was about decision making, and decisions shape economics. So that's where the link is. So Daniel Kahneman explains, when it comes to decision making, your brain, your audience's brain, has two parts: system 1 and system 2. System 1 is fast. It's an unconscious brain. It operates outside of conscious control, and we use it for everyday decisions. It's automatic, and it largely works on shortcuts, rules of thumb. So, for example, you're shopping for something that you have no idea about how it works or what makes it a good product or not. And so you could delay your decision, and you could go hit the books in the library, and for months on end, you could read books about that particular topic, then come back to the store and then make an educated decision. But chances are you haven't got the time for that. So perhaps a shortcut pops up in the back of your head, and the shortcut says expensive equals good.
Yeah.
Right? We've learned from experience, often if we spend a bit more money, then chances are we'll get something that's better, lasts longer, better suited to purpose. And so in that moment, you might say, you know what, I'm just going to spend a little bit more money, and then I'll probably have done the right thing. And you know what? That's exactly what will happen. You will probably have done the right thing, because these shortcuts, they stick with us because they work most of the time, but inevitably they don't work all the time. Sometimes expensive things are still rubbish, right? So, but it is very attractive to follow these shortcuts. The rule, expensive equals good, allows us a path to a quicker decision, right? And so there's other shortcuts like that. And intuitively, we know these as well. One, for example, is if a lot of other people are doing it, then it must be the right thing to do, right? And so that's how system 1 works. Let's move to system 2 for a moment. So system 2, on the other hand, is a slow brain, takes time to process. It costs a lot of energy, costs a lot of effort. And system 2 is conscious thinking. And because it takes a lot of effort, Daniel Kahneman actually referred to it as the lazy controller. It doesn't actually want to engage. It's quite happy to take the decisions of system 1 unless there's alarm bells going off. And so system 2 is our logical brain, right? It can look at all the information in the situation, and then we can come up with the most rational decision based on that. So let's say if we're comparing two washing machines, or we need to make a decision, or somebody comes at us with a logical proposal for us to dissect that, we need system 2. Great. Now there's a caveat with system 2. System 2 depends on our attention.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a limited budget of attention every single day. And so to give you an example, parking a car in a tight parking spot that requires system 2. You can imagine if you're not paying attention, if you don't have attention, you're not going to do a great job parking a car in a tight spot. So Daniel Kahneman demonstrates back in 2002 that 90%, that's 90% of our decisions are made by system 1, automatically and outside our conscious control. And now it's said that that's more like 95%, possibly even higher. And so here a couple of problems bubble up. First of all, you might ask, why is this percentage increasing? Well, that has to do with our attention span. As I said, system 2 is reliant on attention. Our attention span was 20 minutes in the 80s. Do you know what the attention span of the famous goldfish is, Stuart?
Yeah, it's a lot less than 20 minutes, and it's very close to my attention span, which is about 22 seconds.
9 seconds, supposedly, for the goldfish. Our attention span is now 7 seconds.
Yeah.
We've been beaten by the goldfish, right? And so system 2 relies on our attention. And so this brings us to the big problem that we have in business and privately as well, but let's concentrate on business. When you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, how am I going to convince this, let's say in lead generation, this person that doesn't know me yet, how am I going to convince them to start communicating with me through, let's say, social media post or a flyer you send out, that sort of stuff. Or maybe you're thinking, how, when I'm actually doing a sales presentation to a person, a group of people, how am I going to convince them that our product is right for them, and their trust is not misplaced in us, right? And that they can avail themselves of our services or our product, be loyal to us. When we are thinking about how we're going to convince other people, you're thinking. That's conscious thought. And so at that moment, you're using system 2, your logical, rational part of the brain. And the problem is that part of the brain tends to come up with the arguments, the rationale, why you should listen to me, why you should accept what I'm proposing to you. And that type of information would need system 2 in the other person to take care of it, or to analyze it and to process it. And our audience doesn't have the time for it anymore.
Our audience is using system 1, and they have 7 seconds to grasp your message. And you've got a message which is 2 minutes long, haven't you?
Yeah, but also you raise information that just does not qualify as information system 1 can use, as in it's not shortcut type of information.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that we actually cause more uncertainty in our audience, and they push back from you and your wonderful, genuinely good for them value proposal, and they decide not to decide. And so I would argue that if let's say you make 1,000 proposals, right? You get a certain amount of yeses out of those. And the other people didn't go along with your proposal, your request, right? So some people might have just straight out told you, no, it's not for me. Other people might have told you other things. Oh, it's too expensive. I've got to talk to my partner. Come back next week. All these sorts of things. I would argue that out of all the no's you got, there is a much larger percentage than you can imagine that weren't actually no's, they were indecision. And they could have been yes, had you provided the right types of information. And this is where the transition to the principles of persuasion come in, is that the principles of persuasion that Dr. Cialdini identified all qualify as system one information. Does that make sense so far?
It certainly does. It certainly does. And you can see it, as you've said, in every situation where people are in this situation, they have thought and they start providing lots of information. You can almost watch business people who are buying services start to glaze over as they have to think, oh, I'm going to have to engage my brain. I don't have time for this now. I would prefer not to have to all this information. So would you mind just going away, please? Because I just don't want to have to deal with this. Thank you very much. And that's the end of the conversation, isn't it?
Yeah. And maybe to some extent, we are, of course, successful, right? If we've been in business for a long period of time, of course, we're making money, we're making profit, we're making payroll, otherwise we wouldn't have been there anymore. So to some extent, we're successful because we figured out a couple of little strategies that have worked for us. But now imagine that your one little strategy is, or two strategies you might have uncovered, is one out of a dozen that are one principles of persuasion, and there's 7 of those. There's so many more strategies that would make it easier for people to make a yes decision. And so without it, you're losing so much time, resources, competitive advantage, not knowing the science. It's a little bit like an architect trying to build a skyscraper without knowing the science, right? The results are not going to be so great. But yeah, the problem is with a lot of, or with everybody that doesn't know the science, they don't actually know they're in agony. They've no idea that, and they might do lead generating efforts and just pour more money in it to create the same small results, just more of them, just because they invested more in it. But if you actually use the science, your success rate would be where it really should have been all that time. And so by learning some science, we can actually get the yeses that we're always asked to have.
Do you know, I'm very aware of the fact that too many times people are not necessarily, and it comes back to a background that I've got in science as well. People don't test their ideas. They just look at it and go, well, that worked. We'll do more of the same. And sometimes doing more of the same is crazy because you will get the same results, only bigger. And if the results you've got is only a tiny increase in your percentage profit, and you pour more money at a strategy and you get another small increase, then that's not really tested to sort of find the best way, is it? That's just sort of, okay, I've done one thing, I'm going to try and get the same result, but I'm doing it the same way. You can't get a different result by just carrying on doing the same thing. I'm really bought into the idea that you've sort of given us here, which is about scientific testing, about, using these methods to actually trial these things to make it work for us.
Yeah. And you hit an interesting point on the head there that, sometimes we hear things and bless us for doing this interview and podcast. People might get some ideas from here, and I hope they use it and I hope they profit from it. But there's a lot of subtle nuances that, if you pick up a little bit of a clue from something, you might be doing something that works, and it works a lot better than you used to do. And then you're sort of, oh, great, now I've got it. But you don't actually understand the subtle nuances that would amplify the effects. And so you're still missing out. So you might be thinking, oh yeah, reciprocity, we got to give people stuff, right? Most people have figured that out. But the amount of people that get that wrong is enormous. I can give you an easy example. There's lots of businesses that have a free ebook on their website, right? Oh, we have a wonderful ebook for you. Just put your name in and your email address. We'll send you the download link, our gift to you. Nice try. But that's not going to activate reciprocity. Because reciprocity, a gift that's given, a gift is something that comes without a requirement that needs to be met.
Yes.
Right? And so name and email address first, then we'll send you the download link. That was a reward, right? And so people feel like they paid for that ebook with their email address, which you're likely going to put on your newsletter, right? So And I'm not saying that, a free downloadable ebook is not a good lead generator. I'm just saying if you think that's going to activate the power of reciprocity, then you're making a big mistake. What instead, or maybe complementary to that approach, would work well to activate reciprocity is to have a simple PDF with, I don't know, let's say you're in finance, or let's say retirements or something, right? You might make a checklist that says, listen, if you're looking to retire in the next 10 years, these are the 15 things that you should not fail to get lined up now, so that you've got your eggs lined up as you move into the future for a good retirement, sort of a thing. And then put that on your website and just tell people, just right click and download, no email required. Now it's a gift, right? Now it builds that reciprocity and that feeling that, that was really nice. That was interesting and valuable information. And so next time when you come with another request, I don't know, which might be, hey, we've got a big webinar on, come join us. Right now you're going to be empowered by that principle of reciprocity.
Brilliant. Patrick, and you've just given us a few examples. I need to remind people, if they want to get more of this stuff, go to systemize.me/free-stuff. You'll see some stuff that Patrick's got, which we're putting in there, which you will really love. Patrick, what is it? I mean, this has been a big part of your life for 25 years, but this isn't something that you sort of just discovered out of accident. How did you come to sort of understand what Dr. Cialdini is doing and really start your journey in understanding the ethics and ethical way of persuading people to that yes?
I found my way to it when I was a sales rep quite a while ago. I was selling scuba diving equipment wholesale to retailers, and I'm based in Melbourne in Australia, and so I was looking after Victoria, South Australia, and Tasmania, which is a decent clump of land. And I was putting in a lot of effort. I loved what I was doing. I was a dive instructor myself, and so I was sort of doing what I loved. I was, every day I was talking to people who had the same passion as me. So it was a great job to be in. But I sort of felt that for the amount of time I was investing in it, I wasn't seeing the growth in my territory that I thought I should have seen. And sometimes I saw my retailers, falling victim to dodgy promises and stuff from other sales reps. And I didn't want to do that sort of stuff either. So I wanted to be better at my work, but I didn't want to lie or cheat either. And timing, I suppose, was perfect. My boss, the wholesaler, he got the the services of a business coach, right, which is of course good, and he got some strategies and insights on how to grow his business. And part of that was that, well, back then, at least, scuba diving retailers are lovely people and they have a passion for what they do, but they're not necessarily great business people. Mm-hmm. And so the idea was to train us sales reps into sort of a low-level business coach where we can do exercises and goal setting and strategies and that sort of stuff with our retailers, help them grow or double their business. And then by definition, we would double our business with them, probably more, because of course, reciprocity, right? They'd feel indebted to us and probably stock more of our stuff. And so anyway, business coach was based in Melbourne, and he said John McDonald's, the gentleman's name was. And he said, listen, Patrick, with all these strategies that we're explaining, if you ever have any questions, we're just here in Vermont. Just come by the office and we can have a cup of tea and discuss it. And Stuart, I don't know if you've ever met a Dutch person on holiday, and then by mistake, you say, listen, if you're ever in our neck of the woods, right, you need a place to stay, come on over, you can stay with us. Don't do that with Dutch people, they turn up. Right? and so did I. So I was visiting John, and so I was asking questions. He liked, because often people, they might implement a strategy and it doesn't work straight away, and then they dismiss it straight away, right? Instead of saying, hey, what am I not doing right? Why I'm not getting the results that we should be getting? And he really liked that, because I would come back and ask these questions. And he started lending me, educational series on cassette tapes, things that used to cost $1,200 or £1,200, expensive stuff. And so I was borrowing this stuff. And anyway, there was a series called Mind Capture of an event that happened in Los Angeles. And Dr. Cialdini was on there with 2 cassette tapes, and it blew me away. I just love the science behind it. Human behavior is interesting, funny, hilarious, sometimes absolutely terrifying, but always fascinating. And then I had a challenge at work, and I used that with a particular brand that had a bit of difficulty. And basically, within 12 months, we were market leader with that brand. And so, yeah, I was converted for life, as I say.
Brilliant. Patrick, that's a great story, but I have the impression, and maybe this is just me, that you currently are thinking he's still not asked me that killer key question that he should have asked me by now. Well, I don't know what that killer key question is. So I'm going to ask you to tell me, well, what's the killer key question I should have asked you by now? And obviously, once you've asked the question, you need to answer it for us.
Well, I think you failed to ask me, or I said I was going to run down it, but we didn't get to it. Let's do a rundown of the 7 principles, what they mean, and some quick examples.
Please do. Please do.
All right. So there's 7 universal principles of persuasion. Why do we call them universal? Because they work in all cultures, all languages, and all countries. That is in itself amazing and very powerful, because our cultures are intermixed, and it's much easier to do business with people in other countries. So this is a skill that works everywhere and with everyone. All right. So there's 7 of those principles. In no particular order, let's start with reciprocity, because we mentioned it already. So reciprocity works on the rule, the shortcut, that people tend to want to give back the same type of behavior that was first given to them, right? If I invite you to my birthday party, well, then really you ought to invite me to your birthday party, right? If I remember your birthday with a card or a gift, well, then you should remember mine. And so in the context of compliance, we are more likely to say yes to people that we owe. Okay, so that's great. And as I mentioned, a lot of people in business think they know it, but don't actually know it. And so they dive into that, not actually doing it right. So a good thing to help you is to ask yourself, how can I help this person genuinely? Not as a mechanism to produce reciprocity, to just be helpful, to be valuable and look after that person. And often just being a interested and caring person is already a great step towards being persuasive. So that's reciprocity, let's say. I already gave you an example of how we could use it. So let's move on. Liking is another principle. We like people that are like us, who like us, and who like us and say so. Right? So to unpack that a little bit, we like people that are like us means we like people that are similar to us. Then we like people that like us, which is the opposite of what sales typically teaches you. Sales teaches you, if you want people to buy from you, then you should do what you can so that people like you. You got to be likable. And that's not wrong. But if I get the feeling that you really like me, even if not quite sure about you, if I get the feeling that you genuinely like me, well, then I'm safe with you, aren't I? Because people that like you look after you, right? And then like you and say so, that is compliments, right? So, and actually on my podcast, we just released an episode about liking. And so, one of the messages in there was, pay someone a compliment. Try it. First person you see today. Look for anything. Anything's game. What they wear, tie, nails, earrings, hair, shoes, whatever. Just whatever you genuinely like, pay them a compliment. Watch what happens. It could be your kids, could be your wife. When you come home, pay them a compliment. Watch what happens. All right, so that's liking. Unity. Unity is often confused with liking, and unity is also the last principle that Dr. Cialdini added. Unity is about a feeling of being part of the same community. If we feel that we're, let's say, from the same town, or this, sometimes, if we're from the same country, if we're in another country, or if we co-create, if we make things together, we feel we have a bond between us, and that inspires favoritism. And that favoritism can make you hear yes a lot more often. Very powerful principle.
Yeah.
All right, then we have social proof. Most people know the term social proof. The reason you know it is because Dr. Cialdini came up with it. Used to be consensus before that, but it was a little bit unclear, so he came up with the term social proof. Social proof means that we follow the actions of others, especially when they are numerous, when the others are similar to us, and when we are uncertain. That basically means we follow the crowd. Brain research actually shows that for a lot of people, the pain centers in the brain light up when we are out of step with what other people are doing. It's painful for some people to not follow the crowd. But it also makes sense, right? If a lot of people are doing something, if a lot of people run away, it's probably not a good idea to
should
stay
run
there,
away,
right? Exactly. So in business, we've caught on the fact of testimonials, right? As in, most people are now collecting testimonials. That's great. And if you think that that's valuable for your business, well, then you're correct. And that falls under ethical persuasion, provided they're genuine. But in terms of social proof, you're only using one little strategy out of probably more than a dozen different approaches when it comes to social proof. So there's a lot more like that where that came from. Maybe a little insight in terms of testimonials. 98% of online shoppers say that detailed online reviews are an important factor on when deciding what and where to buy. The key to remember there is detailed, right? So if you ask somebody to leave you a review, I think it's perfectly ethical to ask them to leave a bit of a detailed review. We imagine a restaurant and they go, yeah, food was great. That doesn't feel so genuine, right? But when we have more details, the pumpkin was just cooked to perfection, and the service was so nice, and Sally, the waitress, he was so funny, right? More detail, now we believe it more. What's more tricky, and it's also
I was going to say one of the things you find in the reviews where people have bought them in, for want of a better word, is there's that lack of detail, which makes you feel as though they're not genuine, and you immediately look and go, they're probably all fake, aren't they? Because there's just no detail there, which makes you feel as though that person actually was in that situation.
Yeah. And did you, Stuart, we all want our customers to be completely happy and over the moon with the products and services we've provided, right? And so we all want them to leave a 5-star review, in relation to what they've experienced with us. But all these reviews are going to be boiled down to an average number, right? As in, this business has an average score rating of so much. What would we want that average score rating to ideally be? What do you think?
Well, we all want it to be a 5, don't we?
I want it to be a 5. But is a 5 average review score most
realistic?
It's not persuasive. As in, the most persuasive range for an average score is 4.2 to 4.7. 4.8, 4.9, and 5 are seen as too good a deal, right? Nobody is this good. You got all your friends to leave 5-star reviews. You deleted the bad ones, even if that's not possible. People don't know, right? So it lacks credibility. Where 4.2 to 4.7 has credibility, and it's still, for most people, high enough to want to deal with that company. Under 4.2 has credibility, but this is getting too low for people to want to deal with. So next time you get a 2 or 3-star review, right? Don't take it so bad. If your average score is moving towards that 4.7, you're in the perfect place. All right, so social proof. Moving on, then we have authority as number 5. Authority is that we follow the advice of people that know genuinely more about a particular topic than we do. As in, we follow experts. That's why it helps to bring in expert opinions that support your proposal. But you yourself, you are also an expert in your own field. And so you also need to have a way to convey that to other people. And the truth is that once you're face to face with people, you have lost the opportunity to talk about your credentials. And people try, you see it all the time, right? Oh, I've got a master's degree in this, and I've done that, and I've done this, right? And while we do that because we want our audience to respect what we're saying, to process our words with the gravity that they deserve, but the subconscious of our audience goes, you are full of yourself, right? So we lose on authority and we lose on liking. It's lose-lose. So we have to arrange for those credentials to be conveyed before we meet someone, which is exactly the reason why, when you step on the stage as a speaker, there's normally a master of ceremonies, an MC that introduces who you are. So the authority is raised and people process the words you say with the gravity they deserve from the beginning. If you fail to do that properly, then you might be talking to somebody for an hour and you may establish over time that you do have that authority, but that means that they didn't process your words as well in the beginning. So you've lost that. All right, so that's authority. Authority is also about believability. Then we have principle of consistency. That is powered by the fact that we feel an internal pressure to want to stay true to past actions and statements that we've made. Sometimes, online, when you're filling in an online form with questions, right? Let's say there's 10 questions to fill in. If you list all those questions in one row and then the submit button, a lot less people will fill out that form. They'll just navigate away. Where if you break that form up in, say, 3-4 pages and you give people 2-3 things to fill out and then click next, it is much harder to now stop because they're already done some, right? So you're using that consistency principle to get your form filled out, which is, again, just another behavior. So consistency, very, very powerful principle. And then last one is scarcity. So scarcity tells us that we value things more when they are less available. We all have that fear of loss within us. And if I can give let's say a power tip to your listeners, then this would probably be it. Have a look at your own communication. Listen to your salespeople. What are they saying? Read your own brochures. Read the index page of your own website. And when it comes to you expressing what your product or service is going to do for the other person, the other party, are you describing it in terms of what they stand to gain from having your product or service? As in, you're going to save money, you're going to get there faster, it's good for the environment, it's good for your children, right? These are all gains, gaining language. Well, psychology teaches us that people are easily twice more motivated by the potential of losing something than gaining that exact same thing. So instead of using gain language, we should start to use the avoidance of loss. What don't they get if they don't get your product or service, right? Without this, you're going to lose more money. You're going to take longer to get there. You're going to lose competitive advantage, right? Now we're talking about what we stand to lose, and you'll find that people will be, far more take that message to heart. So that's a bit of a quick rundown of the 7 principles.
Patrick, you've been so generous with that. And I can think of, well, if people haven't already started rewriting their website, they should do. Patrick, thank you so much for being so generous with that. I really appreciate everything you've just said. I had not come across that last principle, and many of the others I had heard, but the last one I really thought suddenly, hey, that is a real power tip. So I'm really grateful. If nobody takes anything else away from here, the fact that we should be talking about loss. I mean, it is often something that I do talk to people about, which is, in your proposals, say what is the risk of not going with this proposal by just, say, for instance, making no decision. But making no decision means you are losing time, or you are losing the potential to actually make a difference. So that is a huge new one that I'm going to be building into my own persuasiveness. Now, thank you so much for being so generous and for spending this much time with us. Look, I'm just going to say once again, go and find the vault. There's some great stuff in there from Patrick. That's systemize.me. That's systemise.me/free-stuff. And if you don't mind, I send out an email once a week with brilliant guests like Patrick who are coming onto the show, so that you can dial into the absolutely brilliant training. This is real business training you're getting. So go to systemize.me/subscribe, fill out that form. You will get, for that one, a gift to me of an email address, an invite to come and spend time with people like Patrick, and knowledge of this sort of thing that Patrick giving away and trying to help you do things. Patrick, thank you so much for being with us today and spending so long explaining that. I cannot thank you enough for giving us so much of your time. And I really want to say you have persuaded me to go and do something today and give back more than I'm giving at the moment. So thank you for that.
Wonderful. That's great. It was great to be here. And yeah, if people want to know more, they can, of course, visit my website, ethicalpersuasion.com.au. And I've also started my own podcast channel, Ethical Persuasion Unlocked. And so if you want more of what you've heard today, then it's also a great place to start. But please remember that to develop application skills and confidence, you are going to have to do, and your team, some formal training. You're not going to get that from just watching videos and listening to podcasts.
Both of those resources are in the vault. So please, if you didn't get those things, go to the vault. You'll find them there. Patrick, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And I look forward to going and practicing more of this stuff myself.
Wonderful.